Today's function is going to work on if statements and functions that return values and functions that perform actions. All the things we've been doing so far. Just another example. And this time we've got a website that currently has the time, the local time on the client machine, but we're going to turn that time into something that's in Roman numerals. Now the way we'll start, let's go back to our main page where we see we have an iframe, source equals project slash the time.html, and that's just been printing out in JavaScript the current time of the client machine. We're going to change that to be a project's Roman time.html, and what we'll see is something like this that has our iframe and has the time, in this case XX:V. Well, that's the 20th hour and the 5th minute, so it's 5 minutes after 10. Now, how do Roman numerals work? Well, the 1 is the letter I, the 5 is the V, the X is the 10, the L is the 50, and we're not going to go any bigger than that, although we could do 100, 500, and 1,000. We're going to just work with numbers that are less than 100. And the way these work, I've got a chart here, but it's probably not worth looking at all that closely. But what it comes down to is the numbers get added together. So something like 13 is an X for 10, and then an I and an I and an I for 13. 57 takes an L, which is 50, plus a 5, which is now 55, plus an I and another I, that makes 7. 80 is just an L for 50 plus an X and an X and an X to make 80. Of course, we don't normally write things with the plus sign, so something like 14 would actually be XIV. The 4 is different. It really, the 1 goes in front of the V. So think of that as normally XIII for 13 would be the 10 and then 111. But this is 10 for 14 and then 1 before 5 for the number 4. So 10 and 4 makes 14. Now the logic on this whole program is if the number begins with, let's say if we have a 90 or more, we know it's going to begin with an XC. XC happens to refer to, XC is 10 before 100. So that's what a 90 is. Now if it's 50 or more, we're going to add an L to the beginning. If it's 40 or more, we're going to have XL because that's 10 before 50 or 40. By now, once we've got a number, and if we've started with those, when we subtract those values out, we have 39 or less. Now for every 10 up to 30, we can add an X, at which point we would have 9 or less left. So if it's a 9, of course, we're going to add the IX, that's 1 before 10. The 9s and the 4s are the odd ones that kind of have a number before it. If it's 5 or more, we're going to add a V. If it's 4, we're going to add an IV. And at that point, we'd have 1, 2, or 3, which for every one of those, we're just going to add an I. So, it's time to get started. We begin with our standard JavaScript. In the head, that's where we're going to have the functions between my lines 8 and 10. And in the body, that's where we're going to execute those functions. So, in the body, I put get the time. That's a function I'm going to execute, and I know that because it doesn't say some variable name equal to that get the time, I know that it's performing an action. I can see that because it just has the function name, and it happens that there's no values in between the parentheses there. Well, what does function get the time do? We of course begin with the word function get the time spelled exactly the same way. In this case, I'm doing camel case, parentheses and my curly braces. Now, like we did before in a standard time, we're going to begin by creating a new date object, which I'm going to call D. And from D, I'm going to run the getHours method, which will assign H, in this case, of the variable H, a value. It's going to be whatever the current hours are. And I'll take M, I'll create a variable called M, and D.getMinutes will give me my number of minutes. So now I know the hours and the minutes of the current time on the client machine. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a variable called RH, as in Roman hours, and I'm going to have it equal to Roman parentheses H. Now what is Roman? It doesn't exist yet. That's a function we're going to create. And I'll take a variable RM for Roman minutes, and that's going to equal Roman of M. And again, that doesn't exist yet, so we still have to create that. But once done, I'll be able to document.write RH plus a colon plus RM. Okay, so let's get started on creating that Roman function. Like any good function, it begins with the word function, has the word and parentheses, and then a couple of curly braces. But in the parentheses, I've got to put in this case, I'm choosing the letter N just for number. I know that some value has to be sent there, and the other thing I know is I'm going to be returning a value. I don't know what it's called at the moment, I just have a couple question marks, but I can do that just because on lines 18 and 19 I've got variable RH equals Roman of H, and that shows me that that function isn't performing an action, it's returning a result because it's placing it into that variable. So let's take a closer look at what that function is going to do. Now the first thing I'm going to set up is creating a variable called answer, and that's going to be equal to, just double quotes, nothing actually, which as long as I've named that answer ANS, I also know that that's going to be at the end of the day what I'm returning. Okay, I haven't figured out what it is yet, but that is what I'll be returning. Now first of all, if n is greater than or equal to 100, notice in this if statement it has the conditional expression in parentheses followed by the open curly brace and closed curly brace. So if n is greater than or equal to 100, what do I know? Well, first of all, I'm going to change my answer to be too high at that point in time, and then I'm going to assign my value of n equal to 0 because I really want to stop. I've got a bunch of if-then statements that are going to be following this, and I don't really want it to do anything else. So I'm going to reassign n a value of 0. So that'll kind of effectively stop the program, and it'll return a value of too high. Now, if n is greater than or equal to 90, all right, that's of course the conditional expression, so it's in parentheses, open curly brace, close curly brace, and I'm going to add two lines here. The answer equals answer plus XC. Now if I had a number like 90 or 92 or whatever, began, answer was equal to nothing, just two quotes. Now I've added to that. The plus sign, when you're talking about strings of data, is concatenation. It will add to it. So I'll take whatever I have and add to it an XC. Now at that point, my number is going to be reduced by 90. I don't know what my number is, but if it was greater than 90, now it's going to be reduced by 90, which would mean it'd be some number between 0 and 9. Now if n is greater than or equal to 50, again, parentheses around the conditional expression, open and close curly braces. If it is, I'm going to then say that the answer is equal to answer plus L. Now if it was above 90, it would not have had an L there. But if it was 89, what just happens? I now have an L, and n equals n minus 50. So now, if it was an 89, I'd be down to a 39 at that point in time. If I was at a 50, I'd be down to 0. So it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 39 if that's the case. Now, if n is greater than or equal to 40, because nothing said it was greater than 50. Now, if it's greater than or equal to 40, what am I going to do? Well, answer is going to equal answer plus XL. Remember, 40 is 10 before 50. So XL, and then my number is n minus 40. Now, at that point in time, if it was greater than 40, it would be somewhere between 0 and 9 right now. So at this point, the one thing I do know is n is going to have a value of 39 or less. And then I'm going to take it 10 at a time and add x's. Answer equals answer plus x, and n equals n minus 10. So if, as an example, I had a 39, it would run through this loop three times. If it had 29, it would run through twice. If I had 19, it would run through one time. And if it was less than 10, it wouldn't run through at all. But while n is greater than or equal to 10, it keeps going down by 10 and adding an x. Now at that point, we know that we have 9 or less for n. So what I'm going to do is first say, well, let's see if I have 9, because if I have 9, that's a special case. So my conditional of n equals 9 is actually a comparison equals, a double equal sign. And that's what I have in my parentheses. That's my conditional. If it is double equals to 9, if it compares to 9, then I'm going to say answer equals answer plus ix, because it is the number 9, 1 before 10, and n equals n minus 9. But let's just say it wasn't equal to 9. Well, if it's greater than or equal to 5, because this could be 5, 6, 7, or 8, then the answer is going to be answer plus v for 5, and n equals n minus 5. So if it was 8, now n is going to be equal to 3. If it was 5, n is going to be equal to 0, somewhere in between. But of course n could have been 4, in which case n comparison equals the double equal sign. If n is equal to 4, then answer equals answer plus iv. 1 before 5 is what iv stands for. And n equals n minus 4. Now at this point, we've taken care of anything that was a 9 or a 4 gets down to 0. Anything that was 5 or above is losing 5, so therefore it's going to be either a 0, 1, 2, or 3. So we've got a nice while statement here. This is while n is greater than or equal to 1, answer equals answer plus I. So it could happen once, twice, 3 times, or not at all. And n equals n minus 0. But at the end of that day, what I do know is n is now 0, and the answer is exactly what it's supposed to be, whatever that Roman numeral is. So in this case, when I look at my website, I now see, wow, it took me quite a while. This is 21 hours and 29 minutes. So that must be 9:29. So that's what time it is now. Now let's go back to my get the time function. That's where I did my document.write, the Roman hours plus the colon plus the Roman minutes. And I'm going to write that a little differently. It means exactly the same thing, but it says document.write Roman h, which means take h, send it to the Roman function, and return a value. Whatever that value is, just write that, plus the colon plus Roman m. Now if I do that, you know what that means? I don't need the other, declaring the variable RH or declaring the variable RM and writing them out anymore. Now I can just do that directly. So all I did in get the time is I got my new date, I got the H and the M, and then I just directly wrote the Roman value of H plus the colon plus the Roman value of M. And that's all there is to it.